Hey, this is Cuddles, and welcome to today's weather report. Today's weather is going to be bright sunshine and a touch of Planet Zoo. No, I've not decided on a career change. We are talking about the latest developers journal, which has been released, talking about weather. A very British thing to discuss. Now, this is something that Cuddles can talk about for days. This developer journal, we were introduced to Clement and Joshua. They have been talking about how weather will affect the game. Now, one of the first things that they discuss is the aesthetic value of weather. Big element to our game. Weather's been used in games for years now. One of the ones that I think makes a really big impact is actually Farming Simulator. Base game Farming Simulator has separate weather. You can have days worth of rain that actually affects what you can do in the game. Now, someone else has taken that and modded it even more, and you have a seasons mod, which actually really affects what you can do throughout the entire year. Your surrounding areas become covered in snow. You can't harvest crops at certain times of the year, but that is a mod to the game. Very controlling, very management sim. The Sims has had rain. What we need to think about is, aesthetically, that's really brilliant. But does it actually have an impact on our zoo? As far as I'm concerned, of course it does. We've all been young. We've all been teenagers. We've all been adults. Well, some of you will have been. And part of that is you want to go to the zoo for the day and you look outside and it is tipping down with rain. Actually, you don't want to go to predominantly outdoor-based activity on a day where it's rain, snow, ice, sleet. So actually, it will have an impact on the game. It should have an impact on the game. Now, I'm just purely talking from a visitor management point of view at the moment. One of the biggest things that we'll move to talk about in the moment is how it impacts on the animals. But at the moment, I'm talking about simulation game, how weather should be a changing point. It's a big part of our lives. Being British, we like to talk about the weather a lot, but also in European climate, you shouldn't really be having animals that you cannot accommodate in a different type of climate unless you are faking that climate up. So actually, it looks to me like that's what we're going to be given the opportunity to do. Aesthetically, rain, snow, hail, wind helps. Will our guests that are visiting our zoo, that, to be honest with you, if at 6 o'clock in game morning it's absolutely bucketing down with rain, will our guest numbers be lower? Will our guests turn up wearing cagoules? Or if it's a baking hot day, I mean, we've been having some absolutely stunning weather here in the UK recently. And will our guests rock up wearing shorts and t-shirt? Will by lunchtime, because again, we're very changeable and weather is changeable, and as the clouds have come over around about 11 o'clock, and by 12 o'clock the sun's poking through and it's a reasonable day, and a lot of people would actually then jump in their car and decide to go and do something for the afternoon, will our guest numbers rise? Moving on, I was fascinated about when we saw the original footage at E3. What we saw was very brief. They briefly mentioned it, and it raised my eyebrows at the time because I thought, really? You're really actually going to go there? Now, previously, all of these games, weather may be a feature. It might rain for days or snow. I know that in Zoo Tycoon, you could kind of have an unlucky streak and the weather would get worse. But it had no interaction with the animals at all. As long as your zoo exhibition for them, so their living areas were perfect, it had nada to do with them. What they were demonstrating at E3 was the rain came in, and it was heavy rain, a really heavy rain across the screen, which I've got to be honest with you, it's not of the likes that we would see on a weather forecast here. I'm guessing it's across the plains and where you get dramatic weather. And the chimpanzees on screen, they all started to shake and run around, and they hunted for shelter. Now, the shelter had been plopped down on the screen. You can see that they're almost pre-ploppable shelters. They all ran and they snuggled up underneath the shelter. Now, that's clever. The chimpanzees recognised it was raining. They recognised that they have an action they need to perform in the rain. They then moved themselves to the area that doesn't have rain, and then they huddled. Now, that's really clever. Also aesthetically really beautiful, and gameplay wise a real heart grabber. However, apparently all animals are having this interaction. They will seek shelter. They will seek water. So I was intrigued that on a hot sunny day reading through the developer journal that you might find that your animals will want to go diving into water to cool off, because that means that you've not just plopped down these animals, they are actually interacting with the terrain, and they're interacting with external factors from their exhibit, which is true. It's what animals will do in a zoo. I mean, that's correct. An open air zoo, animals would do this. But I'm quite amazed that we're actually going to be able to see this, and we're going to be able to actually manage this. Now, I've got one question on the ploppables, and out there you might be able to answer this, but if I create a shelter and those animals go and hide underneath that said shelter, or will it need to be maybe a preformed ploppable that they recognise as shelter? So, for example, if it's snowing in the game, we understand that the snow will not gather as much underneath a shelter. Again, bloody clever. It recognises there's a barrier in the way, and as natural would happen, it settles. Well, does that impact on the kind of starting area that you can have? Now, if we look at your standard sim starting areas, and they're usually pretty generic. If you look at Planco has got the forest starting area, the city starting area, grasslands, plains, you've got the Arctic, and then I think it's like a savanna biome, and also a tropical one. Now, that's pretty standard, and that's kind of almost what I would expect to see on launch of the possible areas that I could start in. But I was thinking about what we'd seen and what we'd heard, and that weather affects animals. So, for example, it wouldn't matter if you built the perfect biome in the Arctic for my beloved zebra. My beloved zebra would still be cold because of the ambient temperature. Makes sense. You wouldn't stick 5 zebra out in the Arctic to survive without support. And I've been thinking, well, does this mean that you're only going to be able to make zoos for the climate of which you have chosen to start your park in? And I was a little bit like, well, that could be a little bit restrictive. But no, we read on, and we are a little bit impressed. They talk about the mechanic that has been put into place, or the mechanics that you can use. One of those mechanics they refer to are heaters and coolers. Now, we know they exist in the real world. Of course we do, because anyone that's been to London Zoo, they have penguins. Penguins at London Zoo. They live on an ice platform. It's made artificially, completely artificially. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that we're known for having our horrible weather over here, horrible weather, but we don't actually have the temperature to maintain ice throughout the year. And that is, of course, maintained by coolers. Apparently, we're going to have access to them. So that solves a lot of our issues. So, for example, we could still start a savanna biome. We can put penguins in it. If there are penguins. There's been no mention of penguins. Has anyone seen a mention of penguins? Are we going to have a zoo with no penguins? Penguins aren't aquatic. Well, I suppose they are aquatic. But penguins are in every zoo. Start the penguin campaign, people. Start the penguin campaign. That was fascinating. You're going to be able to manipulate your biome using heaters and coolers. Fabulous. But then came the next thing that actually really intrigued me. And that was that if you have got snow coming down from the sky and you've got a savanna biome, and we're back to my zebras now. So my zebras, they're bimbling around the savanna biome. The snow is coming down. It's an unfortunate day for them. Let's hope that, they don't get lost in the snow. And so they're trudging, they're making their way to their shelter that we've created for them, because they know under their shelter they're going to be safe from the snow. Along the edge of the shelter, what we've also done is we've placed a load of heaters for them, because we know that we've put them in a nice temperate climate, but actually sometimes it snows in our climate, so we're going to need to protect our zebra when it snows. So we've placed a load of heaters. They're all heading to their heater. And the snow is coming down and it's settling. But apparently, because we've got our heaters placed, it will melt. Which is correct. Anybody knows, if you have snow coming and you look at the roof of half the houses around you where the insulation isn't very good, you can always see the roofs with no snow on, because immediately the central heating gets chucked on and it melts on the roof. Heat rises. The same effect is going to be on show. How fabbo is that? Because your zebras are going to wander along, they're all going to be able to settle, they're going to be warm, it's going to be snowing outside. 20 minutes later, the snow's going to be gone. It's a game, we have to be realistic to the game, and life can continue on for them. Epic? Just think about that, guys. Just think about the possibilities that we are being handed. I'm flabbergasted that this is even a possibility. I'm flabbergasted that we're going to actually be able to take animals out of their own climate and ecosystem and recreate that elsewhere. Realistically, not just we're going to pop and hope that they stay. Wow. Updated Developer Journal, lots to think about, lots of creativity here. Imagine the creative tools that we're being handed, that we're going to be able to play through. A little note on the hidden fences as well, that's been discussed a lot in forums this week. So you can have kind of your almost rock enclosure, but the fence is actually hidden inside it. Also, that there's going to be a type of fence that you put up, but actually it's not visible, which again is true to real zoos. There is a truth there. It's fantastic. I remain excited, but this has sent me way off the scale. Few concerns. How heavy is this going to be on your computer? I mean, I don't care. I'm going to steal Grimm's computer. Don't know what Grimm's going to do. That's mine. Me play Planet Zoo. Will you get those effects as good on a lower resolution? Probably not. The same with all games. But then again, I quite often play games on a lower resolution and still have a fabulous time with them. So I don't think you need to be worrying too much about that. But this is Cuddles, and she is very happy with the current Planet Zoo weather forecast. Thank you for listening. Bye.